The word for you today. Hey, it's the weekend after Thanksgiving. I hope you didn't eat too much, but hope you had a good Thanksgiving. Our lesson today is Insecurity in Leadership, and our scripture passage comes out of John chapter 12, verse 43. It says, "For they loved praise from men more than praise from God." You know, one of the hardest things for us is to be more concerned about what God thinks than other people. Now, why is that? Well, we know God is greater than any other person, but you know, we can't see God here, and we don't hear Him with our ears, but we have to deal with all these people here. So sometimes it's easy to be more concerned about what somebody else thinks or says about us than what God does. An example was in the Bible is Nicodemus. Nicodemus was a member of the Sanhedrin. He was a religious leader. He was a lot of prestige. But he heard about Jesus. And while most of the Sanhedrin were very much against Jesus and were looking for ways to get rid of him, there was something about Jesus that bothered Nicodemus. And so he went at night to see Jesus and ask him questions. Why did he go at night? Because he didn't want the others in the Sanhedrin to see him go and talking to Jesus. He was concerned about what they would think or say about him if they saw that. We do the same thing, don't we? We're with a group of friends and somebody starts gossiping about somebody else and putting them down. Do we speak up and say, hey, shouldn't do that? How about if they tell a dirty joke, an off-color joke? What if they take God's name in vain? What if they start running somebody down? Are we quick to speak up and say, hey, we shouldn't do that? Why not? Well, because we're afraid they're going to be unhappy. Who are we to say that they shouldn't act that way? No, they shouldn't. But we're afraid of what they're going to say oftentimes. Proverbs chapter 29, verse 25 says, "Fear of man will prove to be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe." Remember when Joseph was in Egypt and he was Potiphar's servant? And Potiphar was away and Potiphar's wife was there, and Joseph was this good-looking young man. And Potiphar's wife propositioned Joseph. And Joseph said, no, how could I do this against God? Now, the flesh, the feeling, the physical part, that had to be very appealing, because I'm sure Potiphar's wife was beautiful. But Joseph's mind was, I must care more about what God thinks than how my body feels. And Joseph was punished for that. You know, just because we do the right thing, just because we honor God more than somebody else, other people, doesn't mean everybody's going to be happy about it. Sometimes we get punished for doing the right thing. But you remember that Joseph eventually ended up second command of all Egypt. So all God's plan, but he needed to see, and Joseph needed to see, that Joseph would be faithful to God. You know, there's a difference between people pleasing and people loving. Loving the praise of men comes from people pleasing. It's kind of a control thing. When you please other people, in a sense, you're trying to control or manipulate them. And so what do you mean? When we please other people, we're wanting them to like us. We're wanting them we want to be in their group. We want them to see us in a good light. And so we're going to do what it takes to please them. That's people pleasing. Now there's a difference between that and loving people. Loving people means you love them unconditionally. There's nothing expected back. You love them, and if they include you, that's great. And if they don't, it's okay. You do what is best for them. And if they invite you to the party, that's great. And if they don't, that's great. You don't do the loving thing for them to get something from them. You do it because it's the right thing to do. And then loving praise from God means, God, I want to please you. even if it causes other people to not agree with me or not like me. That takes a lot of spiritual maturity. Now, fear of man will prove to be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe. God kept Joseph safe. Even though he got punished for doing the right thing, he eventually kept him safe. For they loved praise from men more than praise from God. They loved praise from men. Do we love praise from men enough to be a people pleaser, regardless of whether it's right or not? Or do we love praise from God better? We'll do the right thing regardless of how, regardless of the outcome. When we seek praise from men, it's usually because of one of three things. One, we feel helpless. We feel like they're not going to like us. They're not going to like me unless I do this. God says, take my yoke upon me. Give me your yoke. Take mine, Jesus says, because mine is light. Give me your heavy load. I'll give you mine, it's light, and let's walk through this together. Not helpless anymore. You have a lighter burden, and you're walking with Jesus. So feeling helpless sometimes leads us to be a people pleaser. Another thing is I'm worthless. I'm worthless. No one would like me. If they really knew me, if they took me just as I am, they wouldn't like me because I'm worthless. I'm not likable. Jesus said, I love you enough that he went to the cross and died for you. And a third reason people become people pleasers is say, I'm unlovable. You couldn't love me. Nobody could love me. God says that he loves us with an everlasting love. Don't give in to those three lies. I'm helpless, I'm worthless, I'm unlovable. That turns us into people pleasers. We do whatever we can to get people to like us because we're not worthy of being liked. But see, that's a lie. Because God says, I love you. Give me your burdens. God says, I love you. I'll send my son Jesus to die on the cross for you. God says, I'll love you with an everlasting love. So don't believe those lies. Don't love praise from men more than praise from God. And God will bless your life. Have a good day.